Ever wondered why your code takes forever to run, or why it's so hard to understand what's happening in your own program? You're not alone. These are common issues, and they often stem from one root cause: inefficient coding. Efficiency in coding isn't just about how fast your code runs. It's also about readability and maintainability. Think of your code as a story. If it's written in a convoluted manner, it's hard for anyone, including yourself, to follow along. This can lead to bugs, longer development times, and difficulty in collaboration. When you write efficient code, you're not just making your life easier. You're also helping your team and potentially your future self. Imagine coming back to a project after several months and trying to decipher a complex piece of code you wrote. It's like trying to read a book written in a language you've forgotten. So, how can you make your code more efficient? Stay tuned for some essential tips and tricks. The first tip for efficient coding is to use descriptive variable and function names. Picture this. You're diving into a new project and you encounter a variable named X. What does X represent? It's like trying to decipher a secret code. Now compare that to a variable named user age. Instantly you know what information this variable holds. It's clear, it's concise, and it's descriptive. But it's not just about clarity. Descriptive names can make your code easier to debug. Consider a function named function1. What does it do? It's hard to tell. But if you stumble upon a function named calculate average score, you can guess its purpose without even peeking inside. Consistency is also key. Consistent naming conventions across your project help maintain readability and reduce confusion. You don't want to be the artist who uses different colors randomly across a painting, do you? Remember, code is read more often than it is written, so make it readable. The next tip is to keep your functions small and focused. This isn't just about having less lines of code, it's about creating functions that do one thing and do it well. This is known as function cohesion. Functions with high cohesion are easier to understand because they follow a single, well-defined purpose. Imagine you're reading a book. If each chapter tells a different story, it would be hard to follow, right? It's the same with code. If a function is doing too many things, it becomes difficult to understand. Smaller functions are also easier to test. You can isolate each function and test it independently. This makes identifying and fixing bugs much simpler. Moreover, smaller functions are easier to reuse and less prone to errors. They're like the building blocks of your code. You can combine them in different ways to create complex behavior. Small functions are easier to comprehend, test, and debug. Another tip for efficient coding is to avoid global variables. Now you might wonder why, considering their all-encompassing accessibility. Well, that's exactly where the problem lies. Global variables are accessible throughout your code, which increases the risk of collisions. Imagine two functions unknowingly altering the same variable. This could lead to unexpected results and bugs that are a nightmare to debug. Moreover, global variables add an element of unpredictability. They can be changed anywhere in the program, making it difficult to keep track of their state. This unpredictability makes your code less reliable and harder to maintain. Instead, consider alternatives. Use local variables that are only accessible within the scope they're defined in. This reduces the risk of collisions and makes your code easier to understand. Consider constants for values that don't change, enhancing readability and reducing potential errors. And use classes to encapsulate related functions and data, leading to more organized code. Avoiding global variables leads to safer and more predictable code. Let's recap the essential tips for efficient coding we've covered today. Firstly, we discussed the importance of using descriptive variable and function names. This not only makes your code more readable for others, but also for your future self. It's like leaving breadcrumbs in a forest, guiding you back to your thought process. Then, we moved on to the significance of keeping your functions small and focused. This is akin to building with Lego blocks. Each piece has a specific role and can be used to create a larger, complex structure. Similarly, smaller functions are easier to test, debug, and understand. Lastly, we delved into the pitfalls of global variables. They're like wild cards in a game of poker, unpredictable and potentially game-changing. By avoiding these, you ensure that your code is more reliable and less prone to bugs. Keep these tips in mind as you code, and you'll see a significant improvement in your efficiency and effectiveness as a programmer.